When I was little, my grandmother had this huge old mirror. It wasn't like a normal mirror, it was this giant old antique looking wooden ornate thing. You know, the kind that you could tell had been around way longer than you ever had. The glass was warped and kind of smoky at the edges, and it felt like if you looked at the glass too long, it almost like breathed. All the kids in the family, me and my cousins, we all thought it was haunted. But you know how adults are when they're like, oh, it's just your imagination, it's not haunted, like you're just super creative, that kind of thing. That's what they would always say to us. And I tried to listen to them, I tried to believe them, you know, respect my elders, until the night that it moved. It was one summer, I think it was 2007. It was so hot that summer, it felt like you couldn't even breathe in the air because it was so thick. I remember that so specifically. And I woke up in the middle of the night. It was maybe like 2 or 3 a.m. because the whole house was dark and quiet. But I heard some kind of scratching. At first I thought it was just my cat, so I got up and looked around for him. But then I noticed the mirror across the room. There were these long, skinny scratch marks on the inside of the glass, almost like fingernails. I remember I was backing up extremely slowly away from the mirror because I was terrified when I noticed my reflection wasn't standing as close to the glass as I was. That's what just caught me off guard. It wasn't copying me anymore. I freaked out. I ran to my grandma's room and I told her what had happened, and I refused to sleep in that room again. Obviously, they didn't want me not sleeping in that room, so my grandma had this bright idea that she would move the mirror into the attic. Now, as a kid, I thought this was the best idea ever. I could still sleep in my room and I didn't have to worry about that creepy mirror. But it turns out you can't just lock something like that away. Years later, after my grandmother passed away, is where things started amping up. My mom had to go through all of her old stuff and found the mirror in the attic. This guy showed up at the garage sale and said he wanted to buy the mirror. He didn't last 2 minutes in the house before he said, I'm leaving and I don't want it. That thing watches you. You know, ever since I was a kid, I always wondered if mirrors weren't just reflections and they were actually windows into, you know, another dimension or another world. And sometimes I think about how maybe mirrors aren't just so that we can see ourselves, but they're actually holding something in, keeping something behind the reflection in the glass. Now, a few months ago, I heard about this game. It's called Baby Blue Blue Baby, and I did a deep dive into it on my podcast, Make You Scream, but there's just some really crazy stories that happen to people who mess with mirrors. And supposedly, if you do this scary game right, something comes out of that mirror at you. But just a warning, as we talk about these scary games throughout the month, they get worse and worse. So maybe don't listen to the podcast at night. But if you want to know more, click the link in my bio.